everybody. This is Alan with Meet the Thriller Author. And today on the podcast, I'm joined by best-selling thriller writer Mary Stone. I first saw her speaking at Author Nation a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas, where she delivered one of the most powerful moments of the conference. We'll get into that in a little bit here. She's now launching several new series and writing psychological thrillers as Mira Shaw. And this is her first podcast appearance, so I'm honored. Mary Stone, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm actually really thrilled to be here. So it was a very cool experience as to how I came to be here. I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah. I was going to ask about this to you later on, but I just didn't bring it up because the Author Nation was so incredible. Okay, so we're definitely going to get into that. But first, for listeners who might be meeting you for the first time, can you share a little bit about your background and what first drew you to writing thrillers?
I wish that I had one of those stories where, I was a little girl and I always dreamed of writing books and, I went through all this training and school and my dream was fulfilled. I wish that that was my my story, but I honestly never knew that I could write a book until about 15 years ago. Honestly, I went to school for marketing, and I was in healthcare marketing. So I was the marketing and PR director for a hospital for about 15 years, and my little hospital got gobbled up by the big hospital, and poof, the marketing department went away. And that happened in 2008 when what else happened? The recession. And there were no jobs, there were nothing. And I was overqualified for everything. And I couldn't have a job. And I had a mortgage to pay and three children, three boys to feed. And I was freaking out because I had lost my job. There was nothing out there. So I tried MLMs. I tried being a health coach, a life coach, everything that I could think of online that I could start doing just to bring in a dollar. And on Facebook, actually, I met a romance writer who was needing an editor. And she asked me if I could edit. And I'm like, well, I edit my own newsletter for the hospital and my own press releases, but yes, absolutely. I can edit your book. Give it to me. I'm the best editor you'll ever see. I mean, because I was pretty desperate. and I loved romance. I was fine. I thought I would give it my all. And so I started editing for her, then I started editing for other people, and I was an editor. That was what I was doing. And then I started editing for crime fiction and things like that. And I've always loved crime fiction. I've always loved suspense. It's really the thriller suspense part of it. That's what I read when I was a little girl and a teenager. So I always was drawn, even if I was editing or even started writing some romance, I would go back to reading the suspense, the thrillers type things, because it's always where my heart has been. But I did start when I was editing romance. I started, you know, I was kind of like, I wonder if I could write one of these, because I'm rewriting these people's books, so maybe I can write a romance too. So I tried it. I started publishing, and there's a really big difference between writing a book and selling a book. So I was still editing and I was still writing and trying, but my writing started picking up in the romance genre. And I was actually making several $1,000s a month. And I'm thinking, I've done it. Between that and the editing, I've done it. And then Amazon changed the way they paid authors. And it was just like the faucet went off. So there I was in the rock bottom again. But in that same writers group, I met a young guy who had a dream of being a publisher. And he was like, well, do you want to write books? And I'll sell books. And I'm like, sure, why not? And we decided to do thrillers together. And and it was him and me and a proofreader. and we launched Winter's Morn, which was my very first Mary Stone book in 2019. And so it's not one of those dream come true. I always had this thing. I I had to fight, and I had to fight my brain. I had to fight my fears, my I'm stupid and I can't do this. I had to fight all of those things to and really be desperate, to be honest, to
Mhm.
be so desperate to feed my children, to be able to keep a roof over their head, that I was willing to break through the fear of people reading my internal thoughts, people judging what I say, and just let it go, and just let it go. So that's my very backward backstory.
Yeah, but that's great too because I think that's a lot of problem with a lot of writers is they don't think about the business side of things. Whereas for you, that was you had to because we all need money.
You need money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a hard business to tap into.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was kind of curious too, because yeah, I started reading your books, and you were so prolific, and that's sort of like the focus that you had was trying to get those books out, trying to get them in front of readers. So you had a pretty good. It was small, but you already had a team from the beginning, which I think is important too for thriller writers. Do you think that's an important perspective to have?
I think so. And, I know that not everyone's going to be lucky enough or blessed enough or whatever enough to just happen to meet some 20 something year old who's like, I've got a dream too. And, I know, but, that's what writer groups are for. That's what Author Nation's for. That's what, so much is for is we start putting ourselves out there and we start trusting people and we get be very discerning in who we trust and find someone who is the opposite of you. If you can write a good book and you know someone who can help you with some other things and you trade roles, there's lots of ways in which you can share responsibilities to do something like what I've done.
I think it's great too because I was reading your bio in preparation for this, and you mentioned that growing up with a mix of childhood fears and fascination with real life villains, and when I read your books, I really see that in there. So I was kind of curious about that. How did those early experiences shape the kind of stories that you're writing today?
A lot, a lot. I grew up in a house where really strange things happened, and I'll just kind of leave it there. Things I couldn't explain, things that were very scary. I also grew up in the Appalachian mountain region. So if have heard anything about the Appalachians and some of the lore with the Appalachians, so strange things happen here. So it happened in the house, it happened in the woods, it happened at the barn. All the things that could be scary and strange were happening. So real life danger, wasn't theoretical for me growing up. And it might, again, I think I do everything backwards. So this probably is going to sound really backwards too, but I had such a mix of both fear and fascination for what's going on, why is this happening, that was wired into me at a very young age. But for some reason, instead of trying to avoid anything scary, I dove right in, almost in a way to face it or to understand it better. Because I don't know, I think our fears lie so much in what the unknown is. Once you see the monster, it's like, okay, Duke's up, I can fight you or die or whatever. It's kind of like, okay, I can deal with it, but it's that unknown. So I wanted to know all the unknowns. I wanted to know how these other people and other characters and other in movies and books fought their fears so that maybe I could borrow some of their courage and be able to do that too. So I would consume Stephen King and Dean Koontz and Tom Clancy, and of course, Mary Higgins Clark, just as fast as my dyslexic brain would let me absorb them. And, and so that's kind of where it started, just a really spooky house in a spooky region, and me, instead of being afraid of it, needing to know how to face it. And I did it through books and movies.
Yeah, I think that's incredible too, because you mentioned that. So you have so many series out there and so many books now after several years of doing this. And you mentioned that you like all of your series or most of your series ended like at the same time. Can you tell us about that? How did you envision that, or is that just a natural progression? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I wish I was some planner who was able to foresee 6 years down the road that, through my hard efforts and work and dedication, things would just culminate the way I think they're going to culminate. I wish I was that person. I am not. I'm not smart enough for that. And there's no way that I could have planned for all of these. There's 12 different series. Winter launched in April of 2019. She's 27 books. I've got 12 series. Some of them are 15 books, some of them are 20 books. One's got 20 books. They have 9 books. So they're all different lengths. And then Sky Striker and Journey Russo, they released last year with 9 books. So you tell me how the math could possibly work for all of them to conclude at the right around the same exact same time.
Yeah, you're probably like, oh, I have all these books. I'm putting out all these books. There's no way. I'm not even gonna. Wasn't even thinking in your head that that could happen.
No, no. And actually, Marion actually, she, I mentioned the proofreader. It
Mhm.
was it was the guy, me, and the proofreader. She's now my production director. So she came to me. She does a Gantt chart every week to make sure that we're staying on track with all the different releases because we have so much going on. And she was like, I think we got a problem. I'm like,
Red flag
could
warning.
that possibly be? And she told me, and I'm like, no, no, that can't possibly be true. But it was true. It was very true.
Wow. And so is that did that lead to a little? I mean, I'm sure you're already planning these, but did that put a little urgency now because you've now developing 5 new series? Can you tell us a little bit about that, like leading up to that, and then also about these new series that you're working on? How that feels starting a new series?
Um, Gosh, it it's really, really exciting because it almost feels like that happened. We already know, we've already discussed that having all of those close at the same time is not mathematically legitimate. So, it feels like the universe almost just hit a reset button on what I was supposed to be doing. Um, and one of those things that I truly, truly believe this, and I don't know what anyone's religious beliefs are, but whether it's God, the universe, Mother Nature, your left big toe, whatever that is that you believe in, I truly believe that that was kind of a reset button for me because I also had these 5 other protagonist stories in my heart. And I really, really wanted to start working on them. I really, really wanted to get them out into the world, but I was so busy with those 12 that I never knew how to find the time to do that. And then also, um, I knew that I wanted to go into psychological thrillers. Who has time for that? I knew I wouldn't have time for that. So, and then for years now, at least 3 years, I've had this idea that I've wanted to join protagonists together and create some kind of like Avenger
You
FBI unit
very
kind
Stone
kind of
universe.
thing. Yeah, they're going to be like, oh, they're going to take on the world, not just America. I have all these thoughts, but I never could do that because all my protagonists were really busy over in their series doing their own things. So with this reset button, those new five series got to get birth and see life. Um, I got to start a whole new genre with Mira Shaw and psychological thrillers. And I'm currently working on creating some really cool things based on some of those thoughts that I've had for a really long time.
Oh, that's really cool. That's exciting as a fan of your books. Just the idea that you might be bringing the new characters, the old characters into a cool unit or something. Just that's very exciting. Can't wait to see what you come up with that.
I know I'm really excited about it. I would love to tease more about it, but honestly, it's still coming together
Yeah.
because I know that I want to create three more new series. So how do I choose who's going to do this? How do I choose what's going to be this? How am I choose what's going to be that? That's where I'm still, you know,
Mhm.
deciding on. But I'll be sure to let everybody know as soon as because I'll be too excited to not let everybody know
You
as
have
soon
to,
as that
you have
happens.
to come back on the podcast and let us know.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'd
An
love to do
update.
that.
Yeah. Wow, so that's really great. I really love how you look at things too, because like instead of freaking out about your series are all ending, you like see opportunities. Oh, now I can work on this that I've been able to do that. So I think that's a because this business is so crazy and things change so quickly that you really have to have that kind of nimble attitude, I think, in order to survive in this crazy business.
Yeah, I shared this from the stage at Author Nation, and but desperation can really fuel a lot of stuff. And one of my rock bottom moments as a mother was when my middle son came up to me and he needed $10, and I didn't have $10 to give him. My house was, they didn't know this, of course. My house was getting ready to be repossessed. I had no money in the bank, and my kid needs $10. So I made a game. I was like, okay, let's find all the quarters we can possibly find in this house. So we looked through the car, we looked through the couch, we looked under the beds, we looked everywhere. And I put a glass bowl on the table. And so every time it chinked with a new quarter, we'd be like, yay, we got a new quarter. We would just dance and celebrate. And then we'd go find another quarter. And then we'd celebrate and find another quarter. And during that whole time, I'm dying. I'm dying inside because I don't have $10 to give my to my kids. And so that was the hardest and best lesson for me because I found $10. He had his $10 that he needed. And then I was able to find another $10. And then I was able to find another $10. And I eventually came to learn that I'm a really good quarter finder. If if it comes down to it and things look really rocky, I can find that quarter. I know that I can find that quarter. So that was kind of the mindset that I had when it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? It's like, okay, where are my quarters? Where are my quarters? What do I need to do? So that's kind of how I live life now is knowing that I can find a quarter if I need a quarter.
Yes. So yeah, I was at the at Author Nation when you were on the panel on the big keynote finale panel. You're up there on stage, last minute. For listeners who don't know the story, can you tell us a little bit about that, how you ended up there, and then how emotional it got? Because that was something that was very touching. I mean, people were crying. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your feelings through it, and of you being up there and trying to help these people? It was just a really touching moment.
Well, just I'm still pretty much in awe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, of how it even happened because I'd never even though I've been writing books for this long, I'd never been to an author conference before. But my editing director, Jenny, she was going. She goes to a lot of different conferences. So she was going, and I'm thinking, I work virtually, so I've never physically met her. I'm thinking, oh, this could be a good opportunity for me to go and I get to meet her in the flesh and we get to talk and things. And I get to go to this really, really big 1,200 person author nation. And there's going to be so much I can learn and do better because I'm not trained in any of this. I just write where my heart takes me to write. I have had no training. So I'm thinking maybe it's time that I learn something. so so I go, and the first 3 days were exactly what I expected. I had my name on my badge and everything, and I'm introducing myself to people, and it's Mary Stone. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew any of the books, and I didn't expect anything different. I'm like, yeah, I'm just me, writing books and coming here to this conference. And then on day 4, there's a thriller panel, the panel that you were there. And I was so excited because I'm like, this is where my people are. And I had a question I wanted answered. And so even though I'm terrified of public speaking, I was going to get up and ask my question. So the panels opened up for questions, and I get in a very long line. And by the time I finally get to the front of the line, I'm like, hi, I'm Mary Stone. The room changed. There were gasps, there were whispers, there were rustlings, did she say Mary Stone? I'm like, just ask your question, just ask your question. And from that moment forward, everything changed because you were there.
Yeah,
The
I was
panel,
I was one of the ones gasping.
that's so crazy.
Sorry.
You know, it's crazy to me. So, they're like, "Oh, you should be up here answering our questions." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like turning around, like I'm being pranked. This is all there can be. I am being pranked. I have been set up, but they were asking me questions, and then I got the prepared to be swarmed.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of swarmed afterward. And I was shocked, so in shock. And then right after that, I get a call from Joe Solaris, the owner of Author Nation. And he says, "You don't know me, you owe me nothing, but I've got to ask you to keep a really big secret, and I need to ask a really big favor." And I'm like, okay. So he tells me that James Patterson was sick and was not able to come and be the keynote speaker at 4 o'clock that same day. And I'm a good secret keeper. I'm like locked down tight. So then the favor was, would me, 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 go up on stage in front of 1,200 people and do a Q&A that James was well enough to do a 30-minute um, question answer on Zoom, and then I would follow him and answer questions from the stage. And Joe, and because I was freaking out so bad, I don't know if you could tell that even when I was asking my little question in the room, I was shaking. I'm shaking now just thinking about it. Because I'm so afraid of speaking in front of people. And he said that he would have a couple other guys sit up there with me if and that way they could also answer questions. So it wouldn't just be like me.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, be brave, be brave, be brave. Yes, I'll do this. Because there had to be a reason it happened that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the
And
universe again.
who am I to get in the way of that reason, right? So, so up I went. And it was very surreal. Um, you know, it, yes, I was stepping out into the public facing side of being an author, into the writing world, I guess, but it felt more like a giant shove.
Mhm.
And since then, I've been asked to be on people's podcasts. So this is my very first podcast. I've been asked to go to New Zealand, to Ireland, to be in mastermind groups, and all of these really, really cool things that have opened up to me as like the business side
Mhm.
of Mary Stone that I didn't even know were possible. Um, but but what got me the most was I I knew that I crafted really strong female characters who faced their greatest fears and made a difference in people's lives.
Mhm.
I knew that my characters did that. What I didn't realize is that I'm also a strong female character who can face her fears and make a difference in people's lives too.
Yeah, I think that's why those characters are so strong because they're coming from you, from what you've experienced. Like most of us, couldn't do that because we
Yeah,
didn't even live that. Sorry.
right, right. And it was such a difference maker for me because my marketing manager, she has been begging me for years to take pictures and do videos and to put it out there. But in my head, I was like, well, why would anyone want to be part of my boring little life? What value would they have in seeing me, create in their life? My characters are so much better than me. They're more interested in me. So I just didn't do it or didn't do it very much. So I just kept my head down, kept my fingers on the keyboard, and just kept working. But then those women, they came up to the mic and they cried and they laughed and they looked so hopeful that maybe they too could find quarters and feed their children and be and be brave enough to push the button to send their works out into the world. That I realized that, yeah, maybe the world needs me too,
Mhm.
not just maybe not just my kids.
Yeah, I think that's so important too, and so wonderful too, because it's so inspirational. And this business is it's tough, it's rough. You get criticized a lot. It's hard to get seen. So to have a success story like yours, I think it just really resonates. I think that's why you saw those reactions that I've never seen at any conference. So it was awesome to be there. So thank you,
Yeah,
thank you for doing that because I can't imagine at the last minute to be up there. So that was very brave of you. So thank you.
it yeah, it was so unexpected and it was so wildly needed. And I'm so very glad that I listened to that internal voice that said, just do it. Just do it.
And now, so we've been talking like for the writers that were at Author Nation and stuff, and I know I have a lot of inspiring writers that listen to this podcast. So I wanted to touch a little bit now about your writing process. So just out of curiosity, so how does what do you write on? Do you use Word? Do you use another software? What are the tools that you use?
I am boring. I use Word. I use Word. I've tried other softwares and and they look so incredibly cool. And maybe if I had someone sit down with me and like walk me through doing it, I could do it. But I use Word. I use Word and I use OneDrive when I create my shared series outline. I share it on OneDrive so that everyone on that book team or that series team, whether it be one of my co-writers or whether it be one of the editors, we could all have access to that series outline. The same thing with the book outlines. So between Word and OneDrive, that's how tech I am, people.
It works. It works incredibly well. So
Yeah, yeah, it's doing okay so far.
And so you mentioned the outline, 'cause, and that was something you spoke of that's very important for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Is it kind of like the James Pat? I love James Patterson's masterclass on outlining. Is that something that is that the strategy that you follow?
I watched his masterclass last year for the first time. And honestly, I was so glad because there is a lot of similarities and it made me feel really, really happy to know that I was on the right path of this genius man who's created this, empire by himself. It's just like amazing. So I felt really, really good. So a lot of what we both do are similar. He does a book, and I think he basically writes the whole book in summary form. I think
Hmm.
is how he says it, which is how I write my outlines too. He has his character arcs, his twists, his pacing, his beats, the villain actions, the payoffs, and all the good stuff. And mine are kind of like that too. Um, with I don't remember him talking about a series outline though. So where I feel like I differ a little bit is everything for me starts with the series outline. So like for Winter, I had this character in my heart and I knew what I kind of wanted her backstory to be. So I have her co-workers, I have her family, I have the series wide villains, anyone who's going to show up in more than one book across the series will be in this series outline. So I try to picture the whole thing and how it's going to flow over the course of her character arc, her relationship arcs, and the series arc itself. And then I decide, what the summary is going to be for each of the 9 books of that series. So I have an idea of what the crime's going to be, have an idea of who the villain's going to be, an idea of how her arc's going to move forward. So that's the series outline. And I don't think that he's mentioned that before, but
No.
to me, it's so important.
Hmm.
I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, yeah, I've never heard him mention that either. So yeah, I think that's and I never heard that either. Doing a series arc outline, but it makes a lot of sense because series is what's most popular on the business side, but readers love series, so it's an important component.
Yeah, I love the series because I have a lot to say. um, I have when you put so much heart into a character,
Hmm.
I find it difficult to wrap everything that that character needs to do and be and how she goes from this part of her life to this part of her life in one book. So for me, having a series, I get to throw all kinds of challenges at her, book after book after book, and she gets to grow or fall or, witness horrible things or do horrible things through the course of 9 books versus an 80,000 word book.
Hmm.
And that's the reason I love the series so much. And I think that's why a lot of readers do too, because you get this really wonderful character and you get to see her deal with so much over the life of that series. And to me, it just makes it so much more interesting.
So you don't start writing the first book until you have the nine outline series done and complete. Then you start writing the first book.
I do not conclude the series outline until I'm absolutely in love with my protagonist.
Hmm.
When I am so in love with her that that she feels like she's my very best friend, and I know her as well as I know my best friend. I know if she likes to. I mean, I know basic things like does she like to get pedicures or manicures? And why. Some women love it because maybe they were too poor growing up and now it's a luxury, or they're just trying to care for themselves for a moment in a life that's chaos. Some women do not want to be touched. So it's not just, oh, what paint color does she paint her nails? It's why. And it's always digging deeper and deeper into how she feels about everything in her life. So I know what books she likes to read and why. I know what she sees in the mirror. When she looks in the mirror, I know what she thinks other people see when they look at her. Everything that you know about your very, very best friend in the world, I want to know about her. And once I feel like I know that, I can say, okay, series outline's done. And then we move to book one.
Oh yeah, I think that kind of explains a lot too, because you write very fast, and that's something that I've always been trying to improve myself. But it seems like by the time you start writing the first book, you know the character and everything so well that it probably just flies out of you.
It really does. It really does. And I think another thing is I know her so well, I don't want to disappoint her.
Hmm.
I don't want to cause her to fail.
Yeah.
I love her so much that I want the best for her. Even when I'm going to be throwing, guns and knives and all kinds of horrible stuff her way, I want her to have grown and to, find the things that she loves to do.
And so, what is the decision then? Like, once the first 9 books are out there, is that do you know like right away, like, oh, this is going to go longer, or
Pretty much, usually by book 4 or 5, we know, if readers are really, really, if the read through rate is
Mhm.
really high, it's like, okay, we want to expand that. And, um, or if we don't want to expand that. And there's been times when I simply didn't get it right, when it's like, oh, this is going to be so great. And then people didn't love it as much as I thought that they would. And I've gotten a little bit of a thicker skin and going, okay, this just wasn't right for for them right now.
Mhm.
Instead of being like, oh, my heart, I'm gonna die, and stuff like that. So being able to cut it quicker than not has been helpful.
Yeah, well, the ratings and the reviews on your books are incredible. I mean, you have books with like 6, 4, 5, 7,000 ratings with 4.8 or something. It was just crazy in this business. So it definitely resonates with the readers. So that must be a nice feeling too when seeing people loving your books.
It really does. It means so much to me. Um, can I share a little story?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
that this was another one of those universe checks that I've been getting very recently, that I needed to play in the world bigger as me, not just as with my characters. A couple months ago, I got an email from a reader, and she's one of the readers that would always comment on Facebook and all these things, super super sweet. And she shared that she had been going through a 2-year cancer journey. So she had been dealing with chemotherapy and radiation, and that my books had helped her get through those. But that just that very week, she had gone to her doctors and gotten some really bad news that she had a week, maybe two to live. And she wanted to thank me for being on that journey with her and for making a difference for her, while she was going through all of this. And then she said how she wished that she could hang on long enough for the last autumn book to publish, which was not scheduled to publish until about 2 weeks after she was supposed to die. And oh my gosh. So I yoinked that book so fast out of proofreading, and I slapped a dedication on it for her, and we put the cover on it, and I sent her a message, and I sent her that book and told her it's not been proofread. It's not gone through the ARC readers, but I want you to have this.
Oh my gosh.
And she got to read it before she died.
Oh no.
And I write FBI and detective thrillers where law enforcement chase bad guys who do really bad things. I do not write literary masterpieces. I do not write things that are going to change the world or you make this huge difference, but I made a difference for her, you know?
Yeah.
And
I think that's
I'm
the beautiful.
sorry.
No, no.
Golly.
The beautiful story, and I think that's what people, People need distractions from their life. I think that's why these books, your books and James Patterson, all these people's books are so popular because, life's hard. And some when you want to read something, you want to escape, and that's what you offer them.
Yes,
That's, I
yeah,
think,
and I agree with that. Kind of like when I was a little girl and I wanted to, face my fears. Books became an escape for me to be able to do that. And, that's why the entertainment business at large, not just books, but movies and TV and everything is so big, is because we live in a really crappy world sometimes
Mhm.
and we need a distraction from that. And I'm so blessed to be able to be part of that.
Yeah. So I want to ask you too now a little segue here on, you mentioned earlier you're starting to write psychological thrillers as Mira Shah. So on the technical side, I want to ask you about that. What was the decision to split the Mary Stone brand from to Mira Shah? And was it like is it like starting over for you, even with your experience? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. I love psychological thrillers. I mean, I love crime down to my bones. I love having a case to solve. I love, the sleuthing of it. I love the villains and how them, because I also write villain chapters. Because it's not just the villain out there, but I have, usually 4 or 5 chapters in the book that's from the villain's first person standpoint so that the reader can understand, why they're doing what they're doing and all of that. So I love all of that. But I also love psychological thrillers because there is no box. With crime fiction, you have a box which is your crime, and you have to solve it, and the whole book is revolves around solving that crime. With psychological thrillers, they get to be really, really messy. Um, they don't have to be contained in any certain way. They can start out really ordinary, and then the tension and the tension and the tension drives. And think about Nick and Amy Dunn in Gone Girl.
Mhm.
Their ending is not a happy ever after kind of ending. It's a very, very messy ending. So I get to not in, but in crime fiction, you need to the case is solved, the heroes win, and so having not such um, tidy endings was really, really fascinating to me. And because I'm apparently very delusional, I, I was like, oh, it's a thriller. I write these thrillers, so I can go write that thriller too. And it's different. It's very different. So I've learned a lot. I've written exactly 2 now, and Almost Gone is the first one in the final chapter book club series under Mira Shaw. And then I just finished Natalie's, which is Almost a Stranger, and it'll come out in a few weeks. So I'm still really new to it, but I love it. It is so fun to have the twisties and the turnies and all of that, and then not have to have such a tidy ending all the time. That's
Yeah.
been really
Yeah, I think that's why they're so popular because it's more real life kind of,
messy.
Yeah, most of us aren't FBI agents and stuff, but we all have
I know.
regular people with messy lives. So
I know. I know it's really, really crazy because we're not, and I'm not. I started writing FBI agents and I knew nothing about FBI agents, but I did a lot of research. I figured it out. I made phone calls. I studied, studied, studied. I watched everything I could possibly watch. I kind of figured it out. And I'm sure I still get a bunch wrong, but I try my really, really hardest not to.
yeah, I was kind of wondering too, because you're doing a lot of work now with your own publishing house now and with co-authors. How's that process been? The collaborative, do you enjoy that shift from all on you to now having collaborators?
Yes, I do. I like that very, very much. I, again, I started out with Alan and me and Marion, the proofreader. And even though I can write really fast, I can write the first draft of an 80,000 word book in about 2 weeks. It's not going to be perfect, so I'll have to, go through and edit and all that stuff. But but I can write it really, really fast. But still, even being able to write really, really fast limited how much we could actually do. So in came the concept of, well, what if we had some co-writers? Could we do that? And with bringing on some co-writers, we needed more editors. So we needed to be able to do that. And then we needed more support for here and more support for there. And then pretty soon it's like, oh, maybe we should just create this publishing company called Mary Stone Publishing and see how that goes. I mean, really a lot of what I've done in my life has been, well, let's see what happens and see if this will work. And so far it's working okay.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah. And so yes, that's awesome. And then I do want to say too for listeners because I saw you have a website for your the publishing side and then for your books. Can you tell us like where the listeners can find you, like if they want to learn more about writing or just fans that want to get your books?
Well, I don't have anything out yet, but that's another thing that I'm thinking about doing too is again, I had no idea that I had anything to offer this world other than my characters, until 3 weeks ago. But I'm thinking, I saw these women who and men, I'm not just saying women, but I just relate very deeply with the women, um, who need help, who need to understand what to do and and need the encouragement. So I'm looking at doing some of those kinds of things. And I'll let you know when and if I'm able to get that off the ground.
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
so now I have nothing to offer on how to write a book except for what I've offered here in the time we've been together. But for my books, basically I'm author Mary Stone everywhere. So website, social medias, all of that. And I'm author Mira, Mira Shaw, um, website, socials, all that stuff.
Okay. And before I let you go, then also so for aspiring writers that are listening to this, what would you tell them? Just like a little something to help them get that first book out there.
Um, gosh, I would tell them what I've always told my boys, that um, what's the worst that can happen? You push the button, and the book goes out. What's the worst? That's will the world explode? No. Will people die in a plague? No. You know. So what's the worst that can happen? And then what's the best that can happen? The best that can happen is that you end up building your own publishing company and you not only get to feed your children, but you get to help a whole bunch of other people feed their children too, you know? And then all kinds of things in between. It doesn't, maybe you don't want to be a publisher. Maybe you just want to feed your children and you get to do that.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate it. I'm very honored that this is your first podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for being in that room and for coming up and for inviting me here. It's been so lovely and you've made it very comfortable and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.